Where in the Folk is not and should not be viewed as a news source. Any names, places, or likenesses mentioned are purely fictional, and any information discussed is purely speculative. Guest opinions are their own and do not reflect those of anyone else. Where in the Folk is not responsible for content accuracy of any stories that are told or what people do with these stories. This show is vulgar, sometimes graphic, and due to its content, it should not be viewed by anyone actually.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Where in the Folk, and we are joined today again by the great and awesome Stan Deyo. How are you doing, Stan?
Hey, Stan.
Oh, pretty good for an old guy. As we discussed before we went to air, I turned 80 last a couple weeks back.
Yeah.
So I'm really officially part of the old folk.
Awesome.
How does it feel, though? Like, does it feel like it's really been 80 years?
Yes, and it hurts. they lied. They tricked me into this. Oh, dear. I was tricked. Yeah. Yeah,
Hey,
no,
Lando.
it's pretty good.
That's good. So, what are we going to be talking about today, guys?
So I think we wanted to. Last time we got into Atlantis with Stan, and we just barely touched some of the let's just call it angels, demons, Nephilim, whatever you want to call it, old world, pre-reset sort of history. And I believe Stan showed us the part of the world where, you know, the seed of the universe, if you will, on Google Earth, showed us like the Garden of Eden and some various other places where, you know, what was it? The king sigils that we saw from the aerial view, the keys,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah.
So I think tonight, Stan, we would love to get into maybe some more angels, demons, Nephilim, and world religion development, like perhaps, you know, how you think the various world religions are like, you know, not necessarily denominations, but just the distinct religions, like how they split into so many branches from that point in time.
All right. You know, I think about that frequently these days. I was watching J.D. Vance, the new vice president, talk about his conversion to Catholicism and the rituals and everything. My former wife, who died of cancer, she was a Catholic down in Australia. And so I am not. I guess, what would I be called? Well, just a fundamental Christian, you know, I believe in the rapture and stuff like that. But seeing him, J.D. Vance, talk about his religion, I thought about it and how many people we have on earth. And I thought, well, back in 1978, I was privy to some communications with a Catholic priest there, a friend of mine. And he showed me some stuff where the Vatican was inviting people to come to a world conference on joining all the religions of the earth into a common single religion for the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And every year thereafter, they would put out this notice and have the meetings. And so they were trying to figure out ways to make Catholicism, you know, palatable to Jews and compatible to Islam. Good luck. But anyway, that's what they were trying to do. And
Sure.
yeah, I mean, you know, the battle between the Arabs, Islamist Arabs, and Jews of Israel has been going on for like 3,000 years or something over a land dispute. And there's been no easy way to fix that, even if Donald Trump thinks that turning the Gaza Strip into Riviera is going to do it. It's not going to work a long time. I do believe that the earth was created by a single intelligence, you know, God. I do believe that there was a hybrid being formed between Earth DNA through his Mother Mary and through God, who inseminated her somehow. When I discovered the Garden of Eden, and it was a rather fortuitous thing, it took me probably, at least 10 to 15 years in the process to get to the final location. But when I was standing there in the real Garden of Eden, I realized that all the religions of the earth remember a start. Islam goes to the Garden of Eden. Christianity, Catholicism, Christianity, whatever, goes to the Garden of Eden. And another other things do talk about the first seeding of the planet of humans in this one spot. And so when I stood there with my team on the safari, right on the spot where the two trees of good and evil, grew, that we read about in the Quran and in the Bible, there was a silence that came over all of us there. Just not that anybody said, let's be silent. It was just that we suddenly looked up and realized as we looked around, we're the right stuff. We're here where it all began. We're the team that returns this to the world to tell you that the biblical stories, the ancient legends are true. And here's where it started. All this stuff has been handled by mankind and, mashed and stretched into different legends and stuff. But there was a start, and here it was. And, it just, you felt very humbled at that moment.
I'm sure.
Right. It was in the morning. We were standing there, and you could look out and see 100 square miles of the garden. And on this side of the garden, probably maybe 10 miles away, I could see two big elephants out amongst the African daisies, just having breakfast and wandering along, And it was so peaceful and so wonderful. And to be able to be there at the beginning of all this stuff, it was just humbling. I can't say it any other way. It was just amazing. It's real. And so from there, I was able to branch out into other legends and myths and put them to a real event. Now, when I talked with the Maasai prophecy keepers, with the Toga chief, both there in Tanzania, they talked about the legends going back 55 generations of their chiefs. And they would all hold ceremony once a year there in the Garden of Eden in the Ngoro crater. It's still there. The chiefs' graves are there with stones piled on. Some of them have fig trees growing out of them. But they told about the time that they were remembering in these ceremonies when God, different names in their tongues, but basically when God came down to earth into the Ngoro crater and took the dirt and made man and then made him, female. And they made it, and the same story we see in the Garden of Eden story in Genesis. And then God left. Well, before he did, he put man and his mate out of the garden because they had violated the rules or something. But basically, I believe it was to put them out just to be on their own, to start reproducing and make lots of people, repopulate the earth, and so that God could choose out of the ensuing people that came from Adam and Eve, could choose people who would choose him of their own free will in his order of things. And it was to give you free choice to join him. Instead of creating slaves, he said, look, I'll create through Adam and Eve all these beings, and you will have the choice. I'll tell you over the ages what the rules are. And there would be people, of course, that didn't see a Bible at that time. They had to learn from nature and the animals and things around them about the right way to do things and not. But anyway, they basically said this is where it all started, right here. And then God, after he put man outside the garden, killed the ground himself, and God went back up and was gone. Now, a number of things after that. I mean, I figured this is really important to discover the real Garden of Eden and prove that it's not a myth. Prove it's real.
Yeah.
And so no matter what religion has formed out of all this, it gives you a foundation to say, yes, we were visited by a super being and we were created. And, now with our science and knowledge, we're starting to understand gene structures and hybrids and all kinds of stuff. And then, I said to the team, I said, well, what comes next? And, one of them said, hey, what about Atlantis, I said, "You got to be kidding! You don't believe that?" Oh, well, years passed, and I started to find clues that popped into my life, and I thought, well, I better look into this. and did find Atlantis was part of the Eden story.
Yeah.
And then I found a geneticist report about the DNA structures of the whole planet, of all the humans on the planet, that all of their mitochondrial DNA all came from one place about 100 miles outside of the Ngoro crater, Garden of Eden. And so the migration patterns of all these humans traces back to there. And I thought, right. And looking into it, then I thought, well, where did Adam and Eve go? Okay, Omo Valley, that's part of where they found the old skeletons. Did they go there or not? And then in the Arab legends in Saudi Arabia, I found out that they worship a place or honor a place on the west coast of Saudi Arabia, which is the graveyard or the tomb of Eve herself. And Adam's grave is down in the southwest part near Yemen, just across, from North Africa there. And so their legends over there deal with what happened after the Garden of Eden. And
what is that? I mean, where does that lead? I don't know if you've researched down that rabbit hole.
which one?
Just like what happened, preceding. I think it's interesting that they're not buried together.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of that history that's not written. There are some papers in the Quranic group that do give clues about certain things and how Adam and Eve kind of argued in their old age or something. And they also think that let's see, Abel's body is buried in an area in the southwest corner of Saudi Arabia in the Yemen province there. And these are from these Arab legends. Now, the things that happened was, Adamic man was different. His gene structure was different than the normal hominids, the semi-ape men and stuff. That was different. What was created had a different perfect gene structure for a number of reasons. And when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden and then proceeded to go down the Great East African Rift, down to the Danakil Plains and across the Gulf of the Gulf of Aden into Yemen, from there, Adam and Eve and their children spread out. But they also, some of them, went over into the Indus River Valley of India. And that was because at the time, I'm going to move my hands around here. Let's see, we had Africa here, we had Saudi Arabia here, we had India here. But before the great asteroid impact that caused the Great Flood, before that hit, India snuggled up to Africa. Saudi Arabia snuggled up to all of them. They had rivers separating them. But Cain, when he left the Garden of Eden, he married a woman from over here in the northern Indian province in the Indus Valley. Now, if you look at the Hebrew of the word Indus, it's telling you it's a future tense version of a Hebrew word saying the men shall wander as fugitives. Now, Cain had the red dot mark on his head. In India, they have no idea where they came from. And he settled Harappas and Mohenjo-Daro up the Indus River Valley, with him and his descendants. Now, India, if you look at a number of their ancient Indian words, like the Brahmaputra River, Brahma, Hebrew, Putra, fear of the creator, Brahmaputra. There are a number of ancient Hebrew words that are in India, but this is a problem. If that occurred at the time of the Garden of Eden, or, within 500 years after that or whatever, Hebrew wasn't invented yet.
Oh, that would be a problem.
And look at Moses. What language did he write the tablets in? The Ten Commandments. They didn't have Hebrew at the time. They didn't. In fact, explorers in the region have found that there was Proto-Hebrew, which is crude symbols, but it then begs the questions: what language was Moses using, or God to Moses, whatever? Because Moses went up and recarved the templates after he broke the first lot. What language? And if it was developed then, that was a long time after the Garden of Eden and after India and the separation of the Great Flood. So I don't know. Anyhow, that led to the migration pattern of the Adamic man down into or up into Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia a lot of their legends, the Arabic legends, from the desert people, they have been kind of morphed into some of the Hebrew legends. Now, everybody thinks that King Solomon, his name was Solomon, Solomon. Not so. In the Hebrew version, David's son was called Shlomo, and you don't get Solomon out of that.
Right.
But if you go to the Hittite legends up north of Israel, David's mother, Bathsheba, was a Hittite following the ancient Arab legends of Shalmaneser the Great, the first, second, and third. Now, Solomon, this was where the origin of the English word Solomon came from. It came from the Arabic legends of that guy. And Shalmaneser the first, he was a mighty king in the kingdom there in Saudi Arabia. He had something that made fire go before his armies and to destroy the opposing army.
Mhm.
Wait a minute. Legend says the Ark of the Covenant went before the people of Israel and they made fire. Okay. Do you see the parallels starting to creep in here? The real events, whatever they were, have been morphed into various things by the cultures and civilizations that followed, but they did happen. In Saudi Arabia, when it was, before it was widely populated like this, one of 200 angels, beings from the parallel universe around us, descended into Mount Hermon in Syria, Western Syria. And they went down into what is now Israel and populated that. And they also went down along the Gulf of, we used to call it the Persian Gulf. It's the Gulf of the Arab Gulf now, kind of like the Gulf of America now, different names. Anyway, they came in, and these are super beings with genetic structure that is definitely above our own, further progressed. And they went to South America, they went to North America, they went to China, they went to Africa, and possibly some islands. Now, these 200 angels formed into group leaderships of other angels like them that were cast down. Boy, there's so much parallel rabbit holes to this. Anyway, the leader of the angelic group, the fallen ones in the rebellion against the Creator, landed in Saudi Arabia. And the leader of the group was called Poseidon by Greek legend names and things like that. And you'll understand with that statement why the Greeks built the Decapolis cities. There are more than 10 of them in Israel and Syria and around the area there. These were to honor the gods, quote unquote gods, demigods, who were these fallen ones with superpowers. Heracles was from the mountains of the Lebanon. The one-eyed giant, I forget his name, that ate people. He was from another province there, but one of these created beings that the fallen ones did by merging human DNA with their own DNA and then altering the DNA like we're doing now. I mean, some stupid guys at the moment are in a lab with some recovered woolly mammoth DNA, and they are trying to make a new mammoth in this time. Now, because of their ignorance of the history of the earth and the geology of it, I mean, the actual history, they're building a creature. If they could get it to live, it won't live long because it was built for an environment that had 60% higher gravity, an environment that had a huge oxygen concentration in the atmosphere. All these things, it won't work in our current geological situation. Anyway, that's the rabbit hole. But back to Saudi Arabia and to the fallen ones. Now, Poseidon built his home on an island off the coast of Saudi Arabia in what is the Gulf of the Arabian Gulf now, the Persian Gulf. And there was a city called Dammam, a little island like that. You can see it in some of the. I'll see if I can find the photographs in a minute. An astronaut took a photograph from orbit in 3D of the whole Middle East region with LiDAR to find hills and valleys and that kind of stuff. And it it shows you a perfect circle mound on that island of Damam, which is where they said that Poseidon built his castle for his human wife, Cleito, and for her comfort, he drilled 2 holes down into the bottom of the island, one for hot water, one for fresh water, cool water. And I found at an oil company the geology study that they did of showing the layers underneath Damam Island. In fact, underneath the whole Middle East. And Damam Island is the only one where hot water has come up from the lower levels up to one side of the island. And over here at a different level came the cool water from the rainfall. And that's how he was able to have hot and cold water there. It fits the legend. And
That's wild.
I actually got to talk to the astronaut about this, and he says, "Well, I don't know if that proves Atlantis, but he says, yeah, that's a very interesting geological area and a phenomenon like that." Anyway, coming back to genes and to hybrids, when the Atlanteans, which were the Poseidon, the fallen ones in his group, remember there are other groups in South America.
Were they like, as far as the different groups go? Do you know if any of them were ever at war with each other during that?
Yeah. There was one at war in India. You can get this from the Vedic records. There was one god that had his home on an island offshore of northwestern India, I think it is now. And I was watching a documentary where they discovered this missing city of such and such I can't remember the Indian name, off the coast there. There was legends in India it was there. The divers and people found it, and that's where that god had his home. But he had a war with other gods, which went back towards Iran. And I looked at the battleground. Part of the battleground was around the Indus River, where the 2 cities I told you about, Mohenjo-daro and Harappas, still exist today as archaeological finds. One of the strange features in both is that the dead bodies, the skeletons, were all laying flat with their head facing in the same direction. Okay. And the pottery of the age was fused from a nuclear blast.
Oh, wow.
So
okay.
And the Indian legends talk about big weapons and, big fire and all that kind of junk. And
So this wasn't like swords and shields. This is like
high tech.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
like Nephilim or whatever you want to call it,
exactly.
fallen technology.
Yeah, definitely. You just have to open your mind and step outside the box that they put us in education and say, well, wait a minute, are there other ways to explain these things? And if so, let's prove it. And the Vedic records are just, boy, they're unlocking a lot of stuff when you get into that with this mindset and spread out. The Prime Minister of India, about 5 years ago, I think it was, came out and said that they are now confirming from their scientists that the DNA pattern for the high caste in India comes from Ethiopia. They have Ethiopian DNA, which is, when Cain and them came over, they brought DNA from North Africa into India. And then the asteroid hit and split Pangea, all the continents were together. It split, pushed India up into China, pushed Africa and Saudi Arabia over this way, and pushed India over that way, and Australia down and over there somewhere. This impact was massive. And, I've been telling people this is, I found what caused the Great Flood. And I located it by looking at the stress lines on the bottom of the ocean and using data that was given to me by a company over in California that do stuff with Google. And they had remapped the bottoms of the oceans. And I was able to see in there where that asteroid impacted. And I put it on my various graphs and things. And last month, I think there was an announcement made that they think they have found the asteroid, an asteroid, in the Indian Ocean that caused, great separation of continents and things like that. They're catching up.
Yeah, but, that's what they're doing. Because when you showed us that, like, it could, like, after you showed us that the last time you were on Google Earth, I can't think it would be anything else.
Like, yeah. You don't have to be a physicist to see that, or a geologist. I mean, just a kid can say, yeah, something moved these apart. And there's where it started. So, yeah, anyway, back to Saudi Arabia. what they were doing was altering DNA with, probably Neanderthal and various other human DNA strings, and some of the Adam and Eve type, the Adamic streams. They were trying to alter those in their DNA to create their own race, for their own population to go back and fight, in the parallel universe. There really is a war in progress now that's been going for long before mankind existed, and it's coming to a close in the near future. Probably 1,000 years from now, it'll be finished. Reports from the Sumerian records about the gods coming down to visit. Reports from the Bible about Ezekiel seeing a flaming chariot come out of the sky and descend and talk to him and whatever. These things are talking about an effect of parallel universes. If you take the Earth, all the universe that we see, as a virtual reality created as a subset of a bigger creation, the God's kingdom, call it that, but I think the Bible calls it the first heaven. The energy density of the average atom in that big one is much higher than ours, and ours is much higher than a sub-universe underneath us.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Well, didn't you say they have like a rest period whenever they did descend?
Exactly. Sorry, you correct me if I get to repeating, because
no. The audience may not know just from previous conversations. So I just that flashed in my head, Stan, that you had said that.
Well, now I'm an unusual fellow because life has led me into so many different circumstances and finding data that I'm able to put together things to tell you that otherwise you wouldn't know. The UFO situation, I was down for the Teller's project in Australia. If you try to look that up on the internet, Dr. Edward Teller, gravitational research, Australia, doesn't exist. Look at connections between Dr. Edward Teller and Dr. Andrei Sakharov in Russia, is equivalent in the projects. None of that is available to you on the public media, on the internet and stuff like that. But I was taught down there in Australia some things that in analyzing UFOs, flying saucers, and fallen ones that were here with mankind, I saw what was happening inside these crafts when they power them up, and it's equivalent to what we're talking about in a parallel universe. Take the Tic Tac photo or video that they got off the California coast a few years back. If you look at it in infrared, where heat is either black or where heat is white, they shot it both versions. You will notice that weird thing about the very center where the craft is either bright white or bright dark. There's a limit to the number of dark, numbers you can have, showing it on TV or whatever, but it can either be very dark or very bright in the center. And then around that, there is a subset halo or a globe, which is the opposite of hot. It's cooler, and it's cooler than the atmosphere around it. And so they're saying, what magic is this, that a thing can fly that fast, use that much energy, leave no wake trail, and, it's colder than the atmosphere.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's a complete system. It's like Earth underneath. It's like our universe underneath God's universe. The atoms in the center of the craft, because it's a vortex spinning like that, compressing their atoms and everything together. It stores so much spin energy into the atoms of everything inside that field that in the center, time passes quicker. A day of the Lord is like 1,000 years with man. Same thing. These are references to time dilation because of the energy differences in field. Ezekiel's flaming chariot was someone punching through to an angel to bring him a message. And it came down slowly from the sky and over the river there to cool off, to like we talked about in the Sumerian thing, where they had to rest for a period of time to let their atoms normalize. And then, like I said, I think last time also, when you're in a room, if you're that fortunate to have a ghost appear in the room with you, you'll notice that the room gets cool because it's coming from a lower energy density where the atoms are spinning, slower, and so it's sucking energy out of the room that they're appearing in.
Okay. So then, I guess like with beings that descended, it would probably get hotter then, right? Like the opposite effect.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Even Jesus, when he was gearing up to leave on Mount Hermon to go up, after he was leaving Earth, he said to Mary in the garden there, don't touch me because I've not yet ascended. In other words, he knew his energy was, raising up to the point that it would hurt her. Because if you don't do it uniformly, it will cause tissue disruption. Remember, there's a minor statement in the Bible where Jesus is walking amongst the people in a city there, and he says, "Who touched me?" And a woman had touched his robe to be healed of her period problems. And he felt the energy flow from him to her when she touched to get healed. So I'm telling you, energy is everything. I mean, everything. Without spin, without energy, nothing exists. Just fascinating.
It is. It makes you wonder, like, what it all is. Like I don't know how else to explain that.
Definitely. Well, from the only thing we have to go on is ancient writings in various languages, but they talk about a war in the heavens, in the super universe, level 1 existence or whatever, and that the Satan was the created being, the angel, that had the duty of watching over the seed of God, wherever God was, and he. Satan thought he was better than God, perceived weaknesses in God, and formed a rebellion to take over the whole thing. And I often wonder the same thing, like you do, Henry. Why, in perfection out there, why, when everything was wonderbar, did anybody rebel and have a war?
Yeah. Well, it's just like humanity, or the test with the rats where they gave him infinite food and infinite water, and by the 5th day or whatever, they started a war amongst themselves, and started to like tearing each other apart. Yeah. I think even in a perfect scenario, like if world hunger were solved, if everybody had endless money and everybody was fat and happy, I think there's a part of us, and maybe it's just an imperfect part, that it just gets bored. I don't know how else to explain that. It's like some kind of primal instinct.
Well, it seems like it's one of those things, like, in order to have any good, you have to have bad, like some kind of balance. Like, I guess that would be like a nation thing, like yin and yang in a way. Like, it seems so nothing can be completely perfect without having some kind of chaos, it seems like.
Well, you have the light and the dark. And maybe this is if you look at the perfection in heaven where God dwells and where he has all of his created beings.
Yeah.
I thought, well, I'm not going to be sitting on a cloud playing a harp. I get terribly bored with that.
You might be really good at it, though.
Yeah, well, hey. And then looking at reports from various people who've died or nearly died and gone to another world and seen it and come back, there are things that tell you that the life there is a lot prettier, a lot more beautiful and organized. But the thing that Satan was rebelling against, I think, was that God said, I need to be indwelling you. I need to have access to all of your consciousness so that I can direct traffic. If you want to go over to, Alpha Centauri and do what you're going to do, experimenting and learning, I want to be sure that you don't hurt the Alpha Centaurians or whatever. So you need a traffic cop for all of us who, are like little puppies. We're out there saying, hey, look at that. I want to go see this. Okay, but wait a minute. You need a traffic cop. And Satan rebelled against that. He said, no, I want to do my own thing. I don't want to submit my will to you. And that's where the whole fight started, as far as I can tell.
So maybe to stop you there for a sec, and this is just my confusion. So when we were talking about the fallen ones earlier, we said that, kind of the king of the mountain was Poseidon, at least for a little bit. When we say Satan, we're talking about a different person than Poseidon, or
Satan
okay.
is the overall ruler of this planet right now.
So then, where did he go?
He's around. I don't know where. I don't know. He could be way inside the Earth. He could be in a solid mountain with the control of molecular physics. He doesn't have to live where any human can see him. He could live inside of a solid mountain and have a community there, have his technology. I know.
You don't think the flood impacted him?
No, he was probably pretty irritated about it, but that's why after the flood and the hybrid giants and whatever these things were, the chimeras in Saudi Arabia, they went across the Jordan River into what is now Israel. And that's why God said to Joshua and the army of Israel when they crossed over into Israel, go and kill this village, kill everything, every animal, every human. They have bad DNA, which came from the hybrid beings that Poseidon had done. And this did happen. I mean, right now, Syria, I've showed you those black spots over there, all that stuff. That buried a kingdom of giants. And we know from the Bible records that there were giants. And this is another weird thing about religions. In the Mediterranean, there's Cyprus and various other places, they've discovered bones of giants buried under Catholic churches, as though they were either, putting a big X on them as evil, or they didn't want to talk about it. But, virtually every site where we've heard rumors of giants being excavated, they've now built a Catholic church over the top of it, buried it.
Do you think that's why the Book of Enoch doesn't really get much love, like in that way?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. No, I could have written the Book of Enoch with my.
But we may need you to write a new, an updated volume after all your research.
But
maybe so.
There's evidence of giants that's even been found as far in the Ohio Valley, for example. They were finding 12-foot tall skeletons all the time, but they completely erase it from history. Like the Smithsonian comes around and grabs them up, and then when you request to see them, they're like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" I always wondered why. Why wouldn't they want to? Why would they want to suppress it? And I know they are. I just don't understand why. The only thing I can think is just controlling narrative. What do you think, Dave?
Well, certainly to control the narrative in their favor, but understand that proving that giants really existed and doing tissue or gene analysis, you would see that they are hybrids between some other race and humans or Adamic man, which would be against what the Catholic Church wants to release, because they want control. They don't want you worrying about any satanic or evil environment that infected the Vatican, which it did. I'm not an anti-Catholic, but I must tell you that my family has suffered persecution from the church in Europe. We were Huguenot Christians in France, on the Swiss border, and we used to have a castle there. But because they were killing off the Huguenots for being, complaining about the Catholics coming in and putting babies to the spear if they didn't convert to Catholicism, we didn't agree with that, and we left. We went up into England and then back over in 1674 or 1675, I think it was. Our family and 11 other families, the Huguenots, we all settled in New York State, in the upper part there in New Paltz, New York. We were escaping that. So my family heritages don't trust the Catholic organization, the Vatican. There are a lot of good folks that are Catholic worshipers, right? Yeah. And but that's not the hierarchy up at the top.
Have you heard of the Black Pope?
Oh, well, yeah, we've got one now almost, haven't we?
Okay. I just wanted to, because some of our friends talk about this, and wanted to get your take maybe on how you believe the infrastructure is set up within the Vatican.
Oh, gee, that's a good question. I don't know because they are so secretive. This particular pope, legend has put it that he would be the one that leads the flock astray, and is a result of the collapse of the Catholic Church per se. It started back in Jesus' time. This organizing into this structure. And of course, then what was it, Constantine's time, and after that, it really formalized, and then the Council of Trent and things really put books in it. They wanted to have a certain viewpoint put forward, but it became the Rome disguised into the Catholic Vatican. It had governors, which were what do you call them, archbishops and bishops. They governed territories just like the Romans did. The Romans did this to keep Rome, but to let it disappear into this religious structure. Whoever started it back in those days figured it out and said, okay, this is how we rule the people, with a mystical religion basis, and we'll say whatever we want to and be sure that the truth doesn't come out, because the truth is rubbish.
There was definitely some popes that were more powerful than kings.
Oh yeah,
actually.
Yeah.
I mean, the current pope, every day now they're like, he may be on his deathbed.
Yeah,
but I guess we'll see.
Isn't he supposed to be the last pope?
That's what they keep saying.
Yeah.
Now, if they have their way in the Vatican, they will have someone else take the role of pope, but it will be a political, religious structure, a person, which we call the Antichrist, I'm sure. But they've been setting up this global religion, which has to form to fulfill prophecy of a one world religion. And one of the things about this one world religion's behavior that stands out, telling you that it's going to be probably of Islamic or Arab structure, your major power, is that if you disagree with the world leader, and hence this world religion, your head gets cut off. So decapitation is very common in Saudi Arabia, many of the Arab nations, and that's why I think Mohammed bin Salman is pushing, to be the controller, because he's going to include that kind of punishment into the New World Order.
This wasn't in Saudi Arabia, but last evening we were just talking about the 70 Congolese Christians that were beheaded this week.
In the church.
Yeah, in the church, and how terrible that was. There's a lot going on in the Congo, which we were kind of talking about how a lot of experimentation goes on there, whether it be medical or sometimes I think it's a litmus test to how the world will react to certain things in that area.
Yeah, could be diseases and various things like that. Monetary systems. They had a mystery disease, and they're pulling out the bat. They're saying that it started from
3 children eating a bat.
3 children eating a bat, and it has killed 53 people so far, and nobody knows what it is. It says it's tested negative. What was it, Morgana? What all?
Ebola, no Marsburg. I mean, all the big ones. It's none of those.
No.
But the last time this happened, they said, it was probably malaria. I mean, malaria has been around forever. If that's what it was, there would be no question.
And a lot of the existing type viruses can be modified by radiation levels and things, not only from our stuff, but from interstellar.
Yeah.
Our sun is weakening right now, and it's our shield against interstellar gamma radiation from various, dying systems and whatever out there. So with our magnetic field on Earth weakening, heading towards zero, we don't have the shield, and we're seeing results of ultraviolet penetration in the islands around Cuba, where it's causing school children to have rashes, and people to have diarrhea, and when these intense things hit, and it all comes back to a point in South Atlantic, at the South Atlantic anomaly, where this radiation is penetrating. And so all that can be an act of God that is creating these various mutations, which the Revelation speaks of as pestilence. Well, that's, going to kill about 75 to 80% of the planet.
Thanks.
Yeah. not scary at all.
Thanks, scary at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it's a terrifying sense. Just all the different things that are going on between, that outbreak and the avian bird flu that's now moving back around. You've got measles coming back in, and it's terrifying.
This whole move toward putting population from all over the planet, from every nation, into the United States illegally. I mean, this has just put, the kibosh on America. We're being invaded by disease carriers, among other things. But Morgana, I don't know what you've studied about various alternate things like the Druids and things, but the I guess it's in the 1950s, some of the literature being written by people that were, Madame Blavatsky,
Right.
her students, they were talking about the United States becoming a race of tan that spread from South America all the way, Argentina tip all the way up into Canada. All the races would mix and make a race of tan. Do you remember reading that, Morgana?
Vaguely. It's been many years, but yes, I do remember studying her a little bit when I was younger.
Yeah. I know. Yeah,
getting on up in age.
I understand that. Yeah, I wake up in the morning, I think, oh crud, am I still here? Okay. And I have to take a meeting with my body and say, legs, are we working today? Arm, how are you to do? Okay, yeah, all right.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but it's an interesting time.
It is, and isn't it the Chinese that it's a curse or not? May you live in interesting times.
Oh, it definitely is a Chinese curse. Yes.
Yeah. So.
I when I was a teacher in the Curtin University in West Australia in Perth, I'd set up a course for the university in computer graphics and animation and CGI. And about half of my students were Chinese, from rich Chinese families that came down. So I got to learn a bit about their culture. And one of the things I found very odd is I had one of my young Chinese girl students. She was an artist. And I sat her in front of a computer, and the whole class, I'd given them an assignment to use this app that we had on the Apple systems to create anything they want, any picture. And people were going and working all around the classroom, and I went around to her, and she was sitting over there, big tears coming down her face. And I said, "What's wrong?" Her screen was empty, and she says, "Well, I'll do what you say, but you have to tell me. I can't think myself." And that's in the Chinese culture. Wow. You are subservient, and I nearly fell over in shock. So I said to her, "Okay, look, let's get a rose. You like roses? And I want you to make dew falling on the rose and put it into." It went away. Came back an hour later. Beautiful piece of artwork with the rose and the dew.
I've heard the term like tiger parents, where they're like super militant, that maybe creates some of that. I think some of that kind of culture.
Well, I don't know. It's but you can almost feel like the whole population of China, to say 99.9% of them, are like kowtow. In their mind, they're like kowtowing to the superiors. They don't want to stand out. Yeah, well, I mean, look at how much horror has been done to them, with Genghis Khan and various others that, anyway.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to maybe to get us a little bit back on topic, one thing that I was going to ask you, Stan, so you said that you don't believe that Lucifer or Satan got impacted necessarily by the flood. Do you remember a few years ago hearing about, this is a two-parter, a few years ago hearing about the Kandahar giant?
Yeah.
And then the second part of that is, do you believe that the flood actually did take out a lot of them, or do you think that they are still around?
They just retreated underground or something.
Yeah.
There'd be some survivors of it. The technology they had would have allowed them to like in a craft, they can alter the rate at which time passes, and they could be inside of a mountain or whatever, sealed up for 1,000 years, and then change the energy density level and come back out. So yeah, some did survive, I'm sure of it. And when you look at the Hebrew account of the flood, they say, and how Eretz had been, the earth had become waste and void, or destroyed by this. Flood went over the Eretz. Well, Eretz in the modern or semi-modern form of Hebrew meant like the region, the country. It didn't necessarily mean the earth, because they weren't even aware of the whole earth at the time. So that's why when that asteroid hit in the Indian Ocean, it sent a series of high tidal waves, like hundreds of feet, maybe even, a quarter of a mile around the planet several times. And there were survivors. I mean, the ones that were in Bashan, which was Syria before the volcanoes covered it. And some of them were in in Israel today, but in that area, what it was called in those times, whether it's Palestine or whatever. But the giants did survive in pockets, but Satan himself, the Bible says that he is constantly, like in Greek saying going on now, he is constantly going up into the level 1 heaven where God is, challenging God to punish various people down here on earth who were doing what Satan thought was, a violation of God's law, but they appear to be godly people. He's going to and from the throne room between the universes. So he's here, he's there. I don't know where he is when he's here, but he does transit, and that's what I'm trying to make. So
okay, that brings up another kind of stopping point. So was the flood able to take out a lot of them because they had been gone and into this plane for so long, it made them vulnerable? And because he keeps going back and forth, he sort of has that sheath of invulnerability from the next level. Is the same way that a ghost can't kill us. You know what I mean? Like to maintain some level of
godliness.
Yeah, of godliness to where he can't be killed by water, or in the same way that, because it's fascinating to me that the fallen ones were even able to be touched by a flood, like because they came from a space that was, it would be like an ant trying to flood us. You know what I mean? Like
I'm sure that some of them got caught, but they were definitely locked in here. Satan was the one that was allowed to come between the worlds, and he don't forget, he was the most special, beautiful, intelligent being that God ever created. So, I mean, his mind is like a quantum computer or bigger, and in that respect, he probably knew what was coming, and he may have had some of his people delivered to safety or whatever. But understand that we're looking at in Earth time, whereas time passes so much quicker up there than down here. Here than there. A day of the Lord is like 1,000 years with mankind. That is bigger disparity than that, but that gives you the idea of what they're talking about. So when God says, okay, he took a day to do this and a day to make the lights in the sky or whatever, it's a day his time. And our time, it would be a lot longer, thousands, millions of years, whatever. Yeah. So with that constraint, when Satan leaves the earth from our plane here to the next level up, he starts to see things quicker, see greater distances. So he may have the ability to forecast these things in his time and then come back down here quickly and warn his people to disperse or to prepare. But even that doesn't stop, God destroying his presence here. There will be one great big battle. That battle of Armageddon is won, and then there will be a great battle 1,000 years from then at the end of time here. And that one will be when the whole universe that we know will disband in a great fervent heat, and a new one will replace it.
Mm. So do you think in the middle of that, because you mentioned earlier Alpha Centauri. I think maybe a little bit in jest, but maybe not. But do you think that perhaps between now and then there will be like a interconnectedness within the universe, like within different civilizations, different planets, if you will?
Well, during the 1,000-year reign of the Messiah, of Jesus as King of the earth, that it's possible, whether or not his plan is to let, humans in his era go to other planets or not, I don't know. Is it technically possible? Yes. Are there other civilizations out there? It's possible. Jesus said he had sheep and other pastures, So
I don't think we were created and, God went, wow, that's awesome. I can stop now. I just don't.
Yeah. Look, even in the program that I was in there with Tiller, I never saw them, but we had rumors of humanoid type aliens, let's call them that had scales like reptilian structures. They were, reptilian. They walked. And then there were other things that were more like insects that they talked about. As far as I heard in the rumor market there inside the thing, there were maybe like 50 other civilizations that we made contact with, or had made contact with us. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I personally just have never seen them, so it's hearsay.
It really seems like they're getting us set up for like something like some kind of interplanetary connection like that, because we showed a video last night of, was it the UN Nations? Was it? What was that video?
It was UNICEF, which is the United Nations Fund for like child humanitarian aid,
and it's of a alien, like trying to show that we need to be inclusive to aliens.
It's a reptilian child, and the core message is like, don't be afraid or don't treat reptilian children bad. See if you can pull that up. See if you can pull that up, Cecil.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Stan may be entertained by that at the very least.
Well, he's getting that up. Satan is a reptile, a snake.
Yeah.
He stood upright, and then God cast him down to the ground to crawl on his belly after he broke the covenant. Actually, I don't know whether I met a couple of them that were like what they would call blonde-haired. What's the name they give those Nordics? A man and a woman team that were working out of the United Nations, and they made me feel very creeped out, like they were able to kill me if they wanted. They were just, they exuded that kind of atmosphere, but their skin was told, I was told to look for the skin to change color and be rainbow-like because of the cells being more like scales than skin cells like in us.
It's funny. There's actually a village of those people in South America,
in Peru. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Was it a result of post World War II, Cecil?
It was post. Yeah. I can't remember the full story.
But there were like CIA operations going on down there, and you obviously heard. Well, this is a word that may get us banned, but it rhymes with Yahtzee.
Yeah.
And a lot of them fled into that area according to certain sources. But yeah, this is like way after even the Mustache Man, even if he survived World War II, it would be way after even he passed away. But they went down there, and there's allegedly a village of very tall Nordic looking people with blonde hair and blue eyes in the middle of South America in a rainforest
that speak with a German accent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. I mean, for a long time, probably a couple of years after World War II ended, I've seen reports where the governments of the world and the Allies were still very sketchy about whether they got rid of all the bad guys. Are they out there forming? Where are they? And my dad was a pilot, and the Foo Fighters, the fireballs that flew amongst the planes over Europe, they did occur. And it was trying to figure out what technology that was, and maybe if we hadn't ended the war when we did, we would have seen a full disclosure, as it were, then.
You want to watch this video, Stan? It's pretty.
Yes. Thank you.
Pretty wild.
Yeah, let's show Stan that. I think he'll.
This is a UNICEF.
What's up? What's up, Wolfman?
What's up, Wolfman? I'm gonna play it with sound. So.
All right.
I didn't notice this last night, but the symbology with the apple.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Wow.
That's a UNICEF.
And this is for UNICEF?
Yeah.
It's on UNICEF's. It's on UNICEF's website and everything.
Yeah.
You remember? I talked about this last time. The movie or the series V, where there were lizards with human skin tacked on the top of them.
Yeah.
That original movie made for TV in '77, I think it was. It incorporated so much of what we're talking about, as fiction. At that time, a Bible student would say, "Wow, far out! That's in the Bible. That's in the Bible," and they put it in a secular presentation, which was quite a wise decision. But I often reflect back to that, and seeing this thing here, I could see some of the lizards and the humans in V interacting.
Ain't that wild though? Why would they release that?
They just keep pushing this kind of stuff, even if you take the religious aspects, it's been aliens. Everything's about aliens.
Well, my viewpoint on that and what's about to happen, don't you?
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for
the audience. Let the audience know, because we may have new people watching.
Well, I guess that's true. But in 1978, I wrote the book "The Cosmic Conspiracy" to explain part of what I'd been involved in, and part of what is coming from what I'd been shown, and the plan that is in the Bible about the great deception that coming upon humanity had to be something more than just one religion against another one. And I finally realized that the research group that I was involved with, what we were doing was developing technology, not just flying saucers, but all kinds of technology that were light years ahead of what we were doing in real life. And that a point would come when, as Reagan said, by the way, Reagan's wife got a copy of my book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, for him. But he said, what would bring all these warring countries and religions together is an invasion by a common enemy of little green men. And, people laughed about it at the time, but, King Charles, he's got my book, and his dad, Prince, had it. And
I think it just hit me that you could have actually influenced one of the or some of those quotes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
About the one world, the alien invasions and stuff like that. Do you ever kick back and just think about that? You could have impacted history as we know it in some way.
I do, and it's an odd thing because some time ago, about 15 years ago, I think now, someone who was a student of the writings of Nostradamus sent me a quatrain. And he said, "This is you and your book." And I'm paraphrasing. People that know Nostradamus can find this, but it was on the table would be like a rose, a hoary-haired rose. It would change the times. but it was a picture of my cosmic conspiracy, is what he was talking about, with the pyramid and the eye and the rose and the pyramid, all that. I don't even know if I've still got it here. No, it's somewhere locked away because, Nostradamus is not an absolute. So anyway, yeah, I've thought about that, and I know from being a dad and having children that when they're in their rooms throwing crap around and making noise and tearing up the room, they're always apprehensive if the dad and the 10-foot long belt with meat cleavers on it comes in the door. Everything stops. Oh, it's Dad. Okay, yeah, right. We're good. Hey, brother, how are you? And this, believe it or not, this is the concept that evolved in the Allies and the leadership of the Allies at the end of World War II, late 50s. They realized that you can't get people together in the United Nations or League of Nations, which had already failed, and say, let's agree on how to do anything, pour a cup of tea, make a cup of tea, whatever. All their various things, you couldn't get 196 nations and their people to agree on it. And the world was starting to move so fast, technology increasing, that we had to have instant decisions. We couldn't wait for committees. And they had just come through a war with Germany where the leader of Germany said, let's just force them. So by coercing with the United Nations and by forcing, neither one of them worked. But let us fool them. Let us fool them for a period of time, set up a peaceful new world order, and let them be presented with a superior culture, technology, etc., UFOs, aliens, whether we make them or whether they're real. Let us do that and fool the people of Earth into a one world agreement for long enough to show them that it works and that we can run planet Earth, without war. And that was alternative 3. You may have heard that term battered around years ago. That was the third alternative. And whether, we had aliens or not, the leadership was saying, let's create them. And in 1958, even though we'd already been introduced to the aliens, in the Library of Congress, where you see the papers on physics and religion or whatever, there was a section for electrostatic high voltage electricity and a section on low voltage high current stuff. And you'll see that most of our technologies have been over in this set of books here, filed at the Library of Congress. And since 1958, the high voltage electrical fields and those kind of things, harmonics, have dwindled to this. They didn't want you to read about what's happening there. And when people applied for a patent, if it exposed some of this new technology, they were consumed somehow into the project, or, like myself, down to the project.
Or not. Like we've seen that a lot too in our just in our research and stuff and the different technologies over the years. I think if you're not receptive to that sort of thing, they're probably not going to be receptive to you continuing independent, at least known independent work.
Look, I'm trying to put logical things that can be proven for people to make their own decision. And you can't stop an idea. You can't kill the idea. It flows. Yeah.
Unless you try to create a water engine, then you die after drinking a blackberry sweet tea at Golden Corral. Or whatever.
Yeah, I've had bad memories at Golden Corral, but of the kids running around and throwing up on the floor and things like that. It left a bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, so to speak.
A lot of those big. This is totally in the ditch, but a lot of those big buffets like that are going out of business now. Ron's, if you remember Ron's buffet that was all over.
No, if I can help it.
They're already gone. Yep, Ron's is gone now.
Well, with the disease and communicable disease spreading in those places, I can see why people are tending to go away from them.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't stop. People breathe on your food underneath those things, and they spit and sneeze, and it's just not a healthy way to do it.
Or let's put a chocolate fountain so that every little kid in there can stick their fingers in it. And, you know,
Yeah.
I know this is completely off the ditch, but speaking of the chocolate fountain, it awoke in like a horrible moment for me. I watched somebody put a strawberry under that, take a bite, and then put it back. I went, never again.
That's the scene from the 300 where he like kicks the dude down the well. Like that's
Don't expect any gifts from Golden Corral, folks.
yeah. Yeah, Landa Rollins. They're completely out of business now, apparently.
Yeah. Well,
Landa in the comments said her daughter's first job was at Golden Corral and it was horrible. But I did what did Wolfman say earlier? He said that video was how the Grinch stole gravity.
right. You know, guys, I when I was in Australia and on the run with an assumed name, I worked in a short period of time for an Italian restaurant in Perth as a waiter. And I got to see what happens behind the scenes. And there was a like a swinging door back into the kitchen area, and you would get the meals prepared and go out and serve the people at their table. And I came back. Well, I was just probably in the job a week before I got called out about bringing the used plates, you know, the leftover food stuff back into the kitchen and scraping like garlic bread into the garbage. The owner says, "Oh no! Oh no! See that big sack hanging behind the door that opens into there? Yeah, look in there. We put all the not used bread into there from their plates." And
that was going to be the croutons,
or just recycled garlic bread. I mean, goodness gracious! And then and the amount of grease that was on everything back in the back.
Oh my God!
You
saying that triggered a memory. So Outback, they're touted as like, the Australian grill.
Yeah.
I saw how Outback prepares their lobsters. And so they've got this big square plastic container with 2 levels. And they keep the bottom level full of water that they just throw in and out of the fridge. And what they do is you've got a container full of lobster tails in the fridge. They throw the lobster tail on the top level of this plastic container, throw it in a very powerful microwave, and there's basically a grate in between. So this water boils, steams the lobster tail in the microwave. They throw it on the plate and then throw that hot water back in the fridge to use the next time to steam the next one.
That's reason pizza.
I'm a neatness freak. That drives me wild just thinking about it.
Yeah. A lot of their cooking goes on in the microwave.
Yeah, that's the reason I eat pizza. I worked at a pizza place and it was spotless.
It was spotless.
Oh yeah, we kept it clean. Everything was clean. We didn't mess around with the food. So
good. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I worked when I was still in high school. I worked at a Pizza Hut briefly, and I cannot say the same thing. It was grease everywhere, and all of your dough. And I'm sorry, Pizza Hut, this is allegedly, if you're listening, because there are people who out pizza the Hut, but they were basically like every week you would get a truckload of frozen discs.
Yeah.
And you would take the pans, you would give like squirts of just this, who knows what chemicals, and you would place the disc in that, which was oil based. And then there was these aerosol cans that were just massive aerosol cans, like this big. And it was called Activator. And you would spray the disc with this activator and put it in the cooler for 24 hours. And after 24 hours, your dough would be ready. But on a busy night where you were like turning over dough like crazy, you would then take the activated discs and put them in a heater, and it would activate them quicker.
Good Lord.
Yeah, so I'd probably search out places that use fresh dough.
I'm feeling so proud right now because my in-laws owned a restaurant I worked in for about 6 years. And out of 400 restaurants in our area, the health inspector would only eat at ours and one other.
Wow.
So, yeah. I feel really good after tonight.
Yeah, I think I had to burn those clothes after working there.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, by the time you got a slice of pizza from there, at least you're clocking like 300 chemicals at least.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Back to the Future when he went into the future and they had little pizzas about that big.
Yeah, it wasn't that fast, but on a Friday when you had the heater going, it was really fast.
See, but I didn't expect to be able to do that by now because what was it, what year was it he went back to the future?
It was like 2015 or something.
Right.
We're way by.
So
past that now.
I expected flying cars and I expected those tiny pizzas.
It's because we don't have the Nephilim technology. Like
those patents got brushed away.
Yeah.
Look, do you know Howdy McCoskey? Do you know the name?
No.
He wrote a book called Exposing the Expositions about a lot of the old world places that were founded in America and the world's fairs that used to happen where there were these extremely like ornate Roman, Egyptian looking world's fairs of like pre-1920, we'll say.
Oh yeah.
And I was curious if you had heard, I'm sure you've heard of this, but like people talk about that there used to be like post flood, maybe post big flood, but pre mud flood, like they called them like the one world Tartarians or the Tartary Empire that they believed covered the world at one point.
No.
Same reason I don't know. Like if you look up the only nation that really acknowledges them as a civilization that was quote unquote like powerful is Russia. Russia has a whole museum dedicated. And Cecil and Morgana and me looked up the lineage one day. You can still find the royalty of Tartary, and they're all Mongolian.
Yeah.
Like the Mongolian lineage. And they like even the Great Wall of China, that there's even theories will say that wall was not built by China, that it was actually built by Tartary because the arrow slits in the wall face toward China.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that.
So there's it's a very interesting book. And we tried to get Howdy on the show, but he's super busy and he has a new book out. But there's all these places. If you look at especially the World's Fairs events, there's still a few remnants left. Like the Parthenon in Nashville is still there, or close to Nashville, I think it is.
The main thing about you, I think you said you haven't heard of it, but the main thing about it is like how there was some kind of connection between all nations way before what we think they are now. That's the reason we have like the pyramids that look similar to, like we have pyramids in America that look similar to the ones in China.
Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
When the continents were all together,
yeah,
the migration technology could occur. In the Gulf of America now.
I'll never get used to that.
There's the Yucatan Peninsula.
Yeah.
And down into South America, you have pyramids of all kinds down there.
Yeah.
Now, about three levels down, 3 generations down from Noah, one of his descendants was called, in the English Bibles, he was called Yucatan.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, it's Yucatan. And when the continents were all together, this was North America and South America and what is now the Gulf of America. All these touched with Northwest Africa.
Yeah.
And so they migrated from the pyramid technology here. They could migrate just by boat even across over here, very close to, the Yucatan Peninsula. When I tried to find out why they call it Yucatan, where it came from, they don't know. But it's from a relative of Noah.
Oh,
Yucatan. In English, you see it's Jokatan. So nobody ever figured it out. But when you pronounce it in Hebrew, it's Yucatan.
that makes sense.
Got you.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and that would explain. Like, don't we have more pyramids in like North America and Mexico than anywhere else in the world?
I don't know whether we got more, but we certainly have them here.
There's a lot.
Um,
China has a lot.
yeah,
There's definitely, I think there were totally like separate events. Like you have the massive flood that probably took out a lot of these factions. And that's a question I was going to ask earlier. I'm kind of going sort of on a tangent, but with the different factions of the fallen ones, Stan, do you think that that's potentially how the different world religions were formed? Like each were kind of like their own powerhouse and own stories that were passed down.
Yeah, that makes sense. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A cultural bias on the relationship to the superior ones.
Yeah, because I'm sure, like after they were down here for a while, if they had a quote unquote demigod or a god, and they each kind of flexed and exerted their power, the people that followed them probably thought that their truth was the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Possibly expanded from there, maybe.
Well, I mean, just look at Hawaiian Islands and the way they look at deity there, and Sumerians, the way they looked at it, and it has a cultural bias built around one of these demigods. I mean, they aren't perfect; otherwise they wouldn't be cast out. So they had their own idea about the way things should be done, and they wanted the worship of their supporters. So, thus you have fish on Friday. I don't know. Yeah. Well, guys, we'll talk again. I'm cautiously watching what happens in this new American dream here.
I don't know what to think of it, man.
Yeah.
What's your hot take?
Well, the Hopis say a man wearing red, maybe a red hat, will come to save them in the fifth world or the end of the fourth world. And the new world leader has to just become unopposed. So I don't know how America and the leadership of America would be written into that as a global faction, but I just see people going, we've won, everything's going to be fine. And I'm wondering if that's possible, even if someone wanted to do that, because trying to reverse the course of all these just destructive ideas, the liberal approach to running this country was just terrible. It was to destroy it. It's destruction, chaos is a signature of Satan and his ideas, whereas those that are conservative are trying to build and create. And we looked at this earlier about the dichotomy of existence, about if you have light, you've got to have dark. There are a lot of mysteries that I don't understand myself that I try to figure out. So I guess we're joined in that puzzlement about what is coming. But when I used to work in a service bureau in computing in Dallas before I went to Australia, we were advising share market investment companies and whatever. And I had a policy that when my secretary said to me, Stanley, here's a hot tip, buy this stock, I'd say, nope, no, thank you. By the time it's got to that level, you're being conditioned, you're being herded into that gate. So when we now see everything is supposed to be rosy, I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. I
agree with that.
Well, I saw a comment from Alan, a late comment. He said that aren't there underwater pyramids in Asia? Yeah. And I don't know the answer to that, honestly.
There are everywhere.
I don't know. That one off the Japanese coast, I don't think is a constructed pyramid. I think it's just a geological formation. But there's a lot of things that were buried in the process of the floods. They were on coastal regions, and they got buried.
That's another thing I would love to do sometimes, Dan. Which I know we've only been. I try to only bother you once every couple months, but I would love to get you back on here at some point and turn you loose on Google Earth again. And we could just talk about different things.
Yeah, there are things on that are astounding. Hundreds of things, thousands. And there are things that I suppose AI has already filtered out. But when I was looking through it, Google Earth, I'd go like into the desert of Saudi Arabia, one of my favorite places. And if you went down, zoomed all the way down to the surface, there's sand dunes. And I thought, what happens if we go deeper? And in some areas, I'd find stuff underneath that layer of photographs in Google Earth, which is really quite interesting.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Maybe the next time we can catch you for an hour or two, we'll get you on and just turn you loose, and we'll react to whatever you can find.
The Google Earth stuff ruined my life last time. I've been on it a lot.
Yeah.
Did
you go to my page, the show images page, where I had the links to all those? Yeah.
Speaking of which, people, if you're listening out there, Stan Deyo, you can find him at standeyo.com. Buy all of his stuff.
Join He's got some cool Patreon stuff too, so join that as well.
Oh yes, we do have a discussion like this on the third Sunday of the month, and I don't think we have as many listeners as you do or members, but we've got a few hundred, I guess, and about 35 or 40 of them get together. We all have open mic and talk to each other and about everything, like we're doing here.
We're working on, which I don't know how much we'll be able to do on this show, but or on like our Saturday interviews, but we are working on at least the capability to take calls.
Yeah.
I don't know how much interruption we would want like that, but perhaps like when we have shows like this, people could leave voicemails like with their thoughts or something.
We have the capability. I just need to set up a Google number and then we'll be ready to roll.
Well, it's like Art Bell's problems, you have to have a screener and try to do it that way.
Yeah.
I miss Art. He was a good sort. We had a lot of fun.
He was the first person I remember listening to when I was a teenager. I would stay up, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning when my parents went to sleep on AM radio.
Yeah. He had a nice voice. It was calming and great idea.
Landa will let you through every time. And I see Wolfman said he had to leave.
But coast to coast. I mean, that was the thing that shaped a lot of us to what we are. And that's when you come on here, I don't talk much because you're somebody I've always wanted to talk to this guy. And so I just like to sit back and chill.
Yeah, we love just listening, Stan. Like you're one of our indie heroes.
Yeah.
You really are like Indiana Jones or something. Like they just they probably created that character based off of you, honestly.
Actually, they did create it based on a friend of mine that Vendel Jones in Arlington, Texas. He was a family friend because we lived in Dallas. And he organized several digs in the Qumran into the cave at the Wadi Haqiqah, and he gave me maps to get to it and to get in and move some dirt around at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on that day, whatever was there, so I could open up to the lower level, go down the ladders and see what they had hidden down there. But he had a digger, a volunteer from a university, I think, but was a scriptwriter in California in his real life. And in the early days of excavating the Qumran caves, there was you had this level here, and then a sand floor with a lot of sand on it. But if you went to where the sun shone through the hole in the roof of the dome of it at between 11:30 and 12:30 local time, it would shine a shaft of light down, and that would mark the spot, and you clear all the sand away, several feet of it deep, and then there would be a metal plate that you would lift up, and that would open up to a hole with a ladder going down into the rest of the digs where they held ceremony, where the priests of Zadok did. And when you went down that ladder at the bottom of it, there was a drop off, like that, and a little place like this, a ledge where your ladder came down on that, and you inched along that ladder, or that ledge rather, all the way over here to the top of a ramp that went down into the second cave where the white stones and the black stones were in piles, and where the priests held their ceremonies, and where 600 pounds of the ancient incense that they used in the temple ceremonies was buried. Anyway, this long ramp like it, before I got there, when he had this other guy from California there working with him, there was a big rock that was lodged up there, and it did come loose and come rolling down like an Indiana Jones movie. It wasn't a snake, but I share, the movie character's disdain of snakes, and Jonesy, Lyndall Jones and I, we both hate snakes and spiders, but they're there. And so the day that I went there with my friend from Australia was there with me, we had forgotten to bring flashlights or torches, and so we were using matches and combustible candles and things like that to go into the dark down this ladder. So we couldn't see exactly where we were going. So you're going slow, and my friend from Australia got there before me, and he went along that ledge, and he was at the top of the ramp. And so I was coming down like this, and I was just reaching the bottom and feeling with my boot to be sure I wasn't going to fall down the crevasse. And something hit like this, warm, with a heartbeat on my shoulder.
No.
So I had gloves on, fortunately, and so I kind of went, and I hear this thing go off, and I listen, and it goes, I hear it hit down below. Okay, so I scuttle along the ledge onto the ramp, and we walk down, and Malcolm, and then we walked down to the end of the ramp, and then there was another piece of a metal plate that you had to move, and that was you had to kneel down to get in. I guess it was to be revered. I don't know, but it wasn't an easy doorway. So Mal says, "You go in, I'll hold the metal back." So I got in there. I had my hat on and everything, and hunched down like this, and I was looking into the room where the priest held all the ceremony and stuff, and holding the flickering, flame that we had. All over the roof of this was like diamonds, and it was gypsum crystals that they had used to make cement to put the round river rocks into the roof. But it was beautiful, and I was sitting there taking all this beauty, and suddenly I felt that warm heartbeat on top of my hat.
Mm.
It had found me, and it was a bat. It was a bat. Interesting times. We went into some other caves there, and in one of my, I guess it was cave 15. Anyway, we were there during the afternoon, so it was hot and everything. And Mal and I walked in with, we had gotten torches in, and as we walked into this cave, it went back into, opened up and went further back. And as we took about 3 steps into it, I noticed that there were bones laying on the floor. And we walked a couple more steps. And I said, "Mal, what kind of bones do you think those are?" He says, "They're from something big and they've been gnawed." I said, "Yeah." And it was damp in there. And he looked at me. I looked at him. I don't know whether it's just, cowardice or whatever, but we thought, we must withdraw because whatever did this is hiding in there somewhere. So
I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit.
we had fun, Jonesy and I. I miss you. We were trying to decipher the copper scrolls over in Jordan, and we found that they had that the priests that were, or the Jewish priests that were down in the Qumran, in the community there, that they had adopted a Babylonian process of making secret writings, and they were having, in this one case, the copper scrolls had thin copper sheet over sheepskin, and they would, make the Hebrew letters with a bit of a tap, and they would make other things that weren't even Hebrew letters, like there'd be a scratch mark or something like that. But the Babylonians had done this too. And what they would do is they would embed text that meant something a little bit deeper than the rest. And all the other text was superfluous stuff. And so when you wrapped it around a cylinder and then rolled it over fresh clay, only the letters that were deeper come out.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was that we found in the first 6 pages of the Copper Scrolls. And I found that it was written in Greek and Hebrew, because right in the middle of it, all of a sudden here in that 6th page, it said, blah, 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 Hebrew. And then it said Ken, K-E-N, back in Hebrew backwards, but it was like Greek. And then I thought, well, what does that mean? Ken. Okay. Ken means raised or, upper, raised letters, suddenly, of course. And then the scratches became riverbeds and all that kind of stuff. So as I say, Jonesy and I had fun trying to figure out what all it meant.
That's neat. That's awesome.
Yeah. That is awesome, Stan. Well, we appreciate you taking some time and talking to us again. I'll probably bother you in a month or two.
Yeah.
I'll try to send you an email from we have an email that's just our show email and not mine.
Okay. Yeah, that might work. I don't know.
But I'm afraid you won't know who I am. So I'll be like,
you have another name, a secret name? Of what?
No. I'll put like not stranger danger in the title.
Okay. Oh dear. Yeah.
Well, we always love talking to you.
Sure.
Absolutely.
It's a dream come true, really, for a lot of us. So,
do you have anything else going on that you want to plug?
No, these days I just do the patron and then answer a lot of emails and stuff. We get several hundred a day, and try to sell the odd book. We're certainly not getting rich, but try to figure out whether I can, sell various things as DVDs. That's kind of outdated. It's hard to make a living to keep this going, doing what we're doing. I am working on a project with a former fighter pilot over in Vietnam, but he and I are working on a gravitic converter for electricity, and but understand, we had to disguise it as like a mayonnaise stirring contraption, so that if
yeah.
All right.
Well, it's not making us any money, but it's keeping us busy.
And we do appreciate a lot. And everybody, if you're out there, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, do all the good things, and make sure you tune in every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern to when we go over the strange news of the world. And Stan, thank you so much. Everybody go to standeyo.com. Ensure to follow everything Stan's doing over there. And you can also subscribe to the Patreon straight through there. All his stuff is available on that website. And thank you all for watching us, because we are watching you.